What's up, YouTube fans? Today we're going to do a comparison of the FansToys Margh with the X-Transbots Commander Stack and the Takara MP-22, all versions of a Masterpiece Scale Ultra Magnus. These came out quite a few years apart. This is from 2015. I've really had this for a while. The X-Transbots came out at the end of 2022, and the FansToys just came out in the end of 2024. So about 7 years apart for these two, and about 9 years apart for these two. So this guy is pretty old. I don't expect it to win a lot of categories, but I included it here just for fun. I know people are going to ask about this guy, so I decided let's just include him here, but I don't expect him to win. It's really kind of a competition between these two. With that being said, I try to be as objective as possible in these comparisons. Of course, there's subjectivity involved, so if I pick one and you prefer the other, then you win. I really try to do these comparisons to help people decide what direction they want to go with their collections, including buying all of them if they prefer. I'll tell you, me personally, I'm planning to keep this guy. I like him for vehicle mode, so he is going to stay. I haven't decided about this guy yet. But with that being said, let's get started, and we're going to start off with the accessories. All right, so here are all the accessories they come with, and it's been a while since I've looked at these two, so I kind of forgot some of them. But they all come with a blaster. All of them are painted. The FansToys one does convert for the core robot mode, but they all have one of these. The Takara comes with two minifigures. X-Transbots comes with one. I call him the Crack Addict Ultra Magnus. This is from the Only Human episode. And then FansToys doesn't come with that, but it comes with an alternate head for the Dreamwave. So I'll count these off together. Then we've got a set of faces. Now the FansToys and X-Transbots come with 5 faces. Takara only comes with 1, but they all have like a yelling face. Then we're left with another minifigure from Takara. Count off a face from X-Transbots and a face from FansToys. And then lastly, we're left with a set of Matrix holding hands for Takara. Again, we'll count off another face for each of these, X-Transbots and FansToys. And we are down to just X-Transbots and FansToys. So they both have 2 additional faces, which we'll count off. And what we're left with is the alternate chest pieces for FansToys, to have the translucent or the opaque, and the axe for the core robot. So we'll give accessories over to FansToys. Actually kind of surprised me. All right, next we'll talk about the gimmicks on these 3. And I was really surprised that FansToys and Takara really don't have that much for gimmicks. They all have the opening chest with the matrix chamber in there, so that's common. But the X-Transbots with the extra mile, not only with light up gimmicks, but also with sound. There's a sound chip built into his back. That was pretty cool, and the voices are pretty cool. So I'm going to give gimmicks over to X-Transbots. All right, next we'll talk about the cartoon accuracy and the sculpt. In order to do that, we'll put the image right here. Can't really fit it anywhere. And to me, the Takara one is just way too far off. It's really bulky and chunky, but that is kind of how things were back then. Just Takara has refined since then. So to me, it's just between these two. And this is going to be super debatable, super contentious in the community. So it doesn't really matter which one I pick. There are going to be complaints either way. I already know that. That's what comes with doing these verses. But either way, I think they're really close. I think X-Transbots nearly nailed the look. The longer arms actually look accurate to the cartoon, even though I think they're ugly. I think the longer arms in this cartoon image I have up on the screen, it does look like his arms are long and lanky. Whereas the FansToys is more svelte and more athletic, but not as cartoon accurate. So I'm going to give it to X-Transbots. I do think they nailed it. However, when it comes to sculpt, I got to give it to FansToys. I love the way this looks, the athletic look of the robot. Overall, it's also pretty clean. When you come to the back, you do start seeing some of the core robot showing through. But they did a good job getting the backpack to look very accurate. Actually, Takara is the least accurate. But these two, when you compare them, they've got the blue bars along the side. All of this looks accurate. So, and then they even got the butt flap back here, but not, this giant butt flap. So I think they did a really good job on the sculpt. They also were able to cover up most of the screws. They have screw hole covers for almost everything. The X-Transbots does have some screws on here, not a lot. This is one of their better figures, but because of the overall cleanliness and just the look, the sculpt, the more athletic sculpt, I'm going to give it over to FansToys. And again, that is a, for sure, subjective thing, but I'm going to give it to the FansToys. All right, now let's take a look at the paint and the build on these two. And the Takara really doesn't have almost any paint, so I'm just going to count it out right away. But the red here, the white there, the face, and I guess the Autobot symbol, but really not a lot of paint. So I guess the blue on the inside here, either the blue or the red, one of those is painted. But going on, it's either between FansToys and X-Transbots. Both of these are fully painted. I think even the white on this is also painted. I do think they both look good. The FansToys just tends to stand out because they use that metallic fleck in the paint. And they didn't use it in the white this time. They used it mostly in the blue and a little bit in the red. The red is more of a brick red, whereas this one's kind of a muted red. So I think I'm going to give it just by a hair. I also like the metallic red on the missiles. All that makes it stand out. So I'm going to give FansToys the edge just by a hair for paint. When it comes to build quality, though, it's kind of interesting. The FansToys and X-Transbots both feel solid, feel very good in this mode. But as soon as you go to transform it, especially when you're going into the vehicle mode, is where things start to feel a little bit scary. There's lots of little thin panels and hinges on this guy. And this one has some really tight tolerances, especially getting it into the cab mode. It's very cumbersome, and also there's some really thin parts you got to be careful with. Whereas the Takara, of all things, is actually pretty solid. I've transformed this dozens and dozens and dozens of times over the years, and I've never had an issue with it. It does have some loose joints over time. By the way, all have die cast in the feet. The FansToys obviously is filled with die cast, although that doesn't necessarily make the build quality. I did want to mention it is really hefty and feels good. But as far as the transformation, lasting through transformations, I think Takara probably has the best there. So I'm going to give Takara the build quality. All right, next let's talk about the articulation on these three. In order to do that, we'll articulate each one individually. And one thing I just wanted to remind you, I don't measure the range of motion. I measure the points of articulation. So that's how you win on this category. But let's start with the FansToys. And we know that Takara is not going to win this, but I'm going to do it just for fun because it's here. So the head is on a rotating swivel, goes up to there, down to there, rotates around. No side to side on the head. Shoulders rotate around on a ratchet. Up to the side on a ratchet. It does collide here, and I don't think this moves. Actually, I never even checked if this does move. Oh my god, it does. Holy crap. I missed that in the review. That is my fault. Well, I got an extra joint there. And then you have a joint here on a ratchet, so you can get it pretty high up. I just missed this. It was a little tight up there. Rotation at the bicep. Single jointed elbow, but it gets you all the way, pretty much the full bend. Rotation at the wrist, in and out movement at the wrist. Fingers are individually articulated at 1, 2, 3 pins. Thumb is on a ball joint and 2 pins. But now the waist, you have a waist swivel and ab crunch, but you have to lift it up. Just one click is enough, and then you can actually rotate it on a ratchet. If you lift it up a little bit more, you can get a little bit further, all the way around basically. And then the crunch goes back to there. Not that much forward, honestly. And it has to do with how far he can go up, but basically down to there, which is good enough for me. But it is a single jointed ab crunch. Coming to the waist, you have hip skirts on all 3 sides. There is an inner hip skirt too. You don't necessarily have to move them out of the way because the leg will work anyways. But leg kicks up to there on a ratchet. It does hold. Back to there on a ratchet. Out to the side on friction. Rotation at the thigh. Double jointed knee. gets you the full run almost. Nice die cast joint there on the knee. And then you have ankle tilts and no forward and backward. So that's it for the FansToys. Let's move on to X-Transbots. X-Transbots has the head on rotating swivel, but it's also on a ball joint. So you get forward and backward. Not a lot of forward and backward. Honestly, it's very limited forward and backward, but it does do it. Rotates around, and it gets the side to side due to that ball joint. So one extra joint there. Shoulders rotate around on a soft ratchet. This is actually an issue on this copy. This is the first run where the screw, as you turn the arm, it unscrews the screw. So you had to basically go in and take that screw out. I already did the fix on these arms, so they work correctly. But originally, that ratchet didn't work well. And that's why they already lost the build quality point anyway. You have a rotation here at the missile, and you get in and out, so you can kind of rotate it. This missile does remove, but it doesn't actually look like a missile. It's just the front of it. This one actually looks like a missile. You have 90-degree bend at the elbow. The hands can rotate and move in and out. They're a little bit hindered just due to the way the sculpt is. It's kind of recessed into this area, so it's hard to get at it, but you can have full articulation on the hands, and they splay out. And I forgot to mention, this one also splays out on these joints. Just forgot to mention that. But these splay out. They have 3 pins, and the thumb is on a ball joint and 2 pins. So you get some good movement on those hands. For the waist, you have an ab crunch. It goes all the way down. It's a double jointed ab crunch. So it gets way down, way back. And it sometimes will come out like this. And again, I already mentioned the build quality is one of my issues with this figure. So let's get that back in. Oh, and that hip skirt is another thing. The hip skirt likes to just pop out. But we do have same thing, 3 hip skirts here on the X-Transbots. It's a little weird the way it works because it starts colliding with things. But you get that out of the way, the legs can kick all the way up to there on a ratchet. It's a little heavy for the weight. Whoops. And then out to the side on friction, it does hold. Rotation at the thigh. You have a single jointed knee, gets you 90 degrees. And you have ankle tilts, but you also get forward and backward on this. So you could do like a walking pose if you want to. And just for fun, let's do the Takara, even though we know it's not going to win. Takara has a rotating swivel, goes up to there, down to there, rotates around. Shoulders rotate around on a friction joint. Out to the side, it's a butterfly joint here, so you can get it forward and backward, and that also allows you to get it out to the side a little bit more, just due to that extra. But very little, it just gets to there. You have, did I forget to show that on this? This does go out to the side on this joint, and then there's another joint here. So both the FansToys and the X-Transbots get way up on the shoulders. Continuing on the Takara, you have rotation here at the bicep, 90 degree at the bicep, rotation at the wrist. It is on a ball joint, so you get in and out movement as well. Fingers are not individually articulated, the bottom 3 are connected. And the pointer finger is separate, but you can't point because it's curled. So kind of pointless, useless, pointless pointer finger. No rotation, no ab crunch, nothing. It's locked in place, which is very strange. But at the time, Takara wasn't necessarily doing the best articulation. Leg goes up to there, very limited. Back to there, limited. Out to the side, limited. And it can't even hold the weight. Rotation of the thigh around a universal. Less than 90 degrees at the bend, at the knee. And then ankle tilt here. So very clear, Takara is not going to win this category. So really it's between X-Transbots and FansToys. And X-Transbots has an extra movement here at the head. They've got that side-to-side tilt. They've also got a double-jointed ab crunch. Now the FansToys has a double-jointed knee, so that gives them one extra there. But because X-Transbots has a couple of extra points, we're going to give articulation over to X-Transbots. All right, next let's talk about the transformation and engineering on these. When it comes to transformation, I'm going to go each from left to right. The FansToys, obviously, a very different transformation because they're using armor. The armor comes off and becomes the trailer. The trailer is actually not bad at all, but the cab is very frustrating. There's just a lot of steps. It takes a very long time. And also, there's some tolerances and things in there that just make it a little difficult. X-Transbots also not very fun. The transformation is very long. There's lots of little panels and flipping hinges, and overall just not very intuitive. The Takara is actually the best transformation, the most fun. I could do this in probably 5 minutes. So I'm going to give it to Takara. Now people will say, well, doesn't that affect? Well, no, because I was going to give both of these a tie on transformation anyways, but I'll give transformation to Takara. When it comes to engineering, I have to give it to FansToys. This is such a cool, novel thing they've done here. I haven't seen anybody really do it other than, I think, New Age. New Age did armor-based Ultra Magnus. I just love the way it turned out. You would think with armor he'd look big and bulky and chunky, but he actually looks really good. I think he looks the best of the three. It's personal opinion. But it's just a very cool thing that they're able to do it with armor and make it turn into the trailer. So I'm going to give them engineering. All right, next we'll talk about the alt mode on these. When it comes to alt mode, I actually think FansToys is the weakest of the three. It just looks very panely. There's lots of parts. There's a couple places where the paint shows through, where it's supposed to be all red and is blue, or it's supposed to be all blue and there's a little bit of red. So I'm going to count FansToys out on the alt mode. When it comes to the Takara, I think that still, to this day, is one of the best alt mode versions of Ultra Magnus. The X-Transbots did pretty well, but there are some issues with it, so I'm going to give it over to Takara. All right, next let's talk about the cost on these three. And I use the prices on ages 3 and up because they don't monkey with them. And the FansToys comes in at $270 retail. The X-Transbots comes in $210, and the Takara was $190 back in the day. So the Takara is going to get the cost. Now, people asked last time, why don't I use inflation-based prices? And first of all, people don't sell things at the inflation-based price. They sell it for whatever. So there's no fair and easy way to convert pricing. So I just used what's listed on the Ages 3 and Up website by default, the MSRP, right? The manufacturer's price. I do think if you sold this today, if Takara made a masterpiece Ultra Magnus, it'd probably be closer to the FansToys price. By the way, Takara is going to win on cost. Now, if we take them out, I think X-Transbots is going to win the cost. So it's a little tricky. They're close enough. I'm going to give them a tie. These two will get a point for cost. And the final factor in the comparison is the member's choice. We're asking my members which one they prefer just based on their own personal preference and no other factors. You can see that FansToys is going to win the member's choice category. What was funny though, early on, X-Transbots was actually winning that. So they're pretty close on the member's choice, which is why I knew this comparison video is going to be very controversial. There's going to be a lot of debate and comments. I already know it. Don't expect me to be responding to all the comments, but FansToys is going to get the member's choice. So final thoughts on the comparison. You can see the score there. And FansToys is going to win this one, but really close. Only a couple of point difference here. And I'm not surprised that FansToys won, but I'm surprised how close it really was. And I think people who are looking at this comparison, if you bought the X-Transbots, then you may not have enough here to actually go and buy this one as instead. It's a good figure, and I really like it. Me personally, this is my favorite Ultra Magnus. But if you already own this, I'm not sure people are going to upgrade. For me, though, this is really cool. One thing I didn't really talk that much about here in this comparison is the core robot. The fact that it has a third mode, right? It's a triple changer, is very cool to me. I really appreciate the engineering aspect of it, the design, the fact that you get a whole extra robot in there. That's just very cool. It almost encourages you to buy a second one just so you can have both of the robots. But either way, yeah, I just think that's a very cool thing. Now, I had a little bit of issue with the heels on the core robot, so I'm hoping they fix that on their version of Optimus, which I'm very excited for. I think they're going to do a great job. There's going to be a lot of design changes between the core robot here and the Optimus, especially on the legs. Pretty much lots of the legs are going to have to change because it's going to be different. But based on what I see here, I am excited. Now, for me personally, I'm going to put this guy into vehicle mode, and this guy's going to be my Magnus. I'm not sure I'm going to keep the X-Transbots. I'll probably get rid of it, to be honest. But it's still a pretty good version of Ultra Magnus, and the fact that it has the voice chip and the light-up eyes, that's pretty unique. That's something that they have that others don't have, so that's pretty cool. But that's really it for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.